Hi, Hadley. That's Joey's little one. One of Joey's little ones. All right, this is Dolly. Dolly frame update. That's a lot of frame. How long do you guys think that thing is? It's 18 feet. It's a little over 18, but you can kind of see what's going on here. It's close to being ready. There's still a couple more details. I think we can really play this game of getting this. I think we can build most of the car except the roll cage without the cab on now. And what I mean by that is, once we get, so Luke's really close to getting this where we put it back under. We'll put it back under there and we're gonna figure out, we can bolt the radius arms into their mounts now. And then we're gonna figure out where the beam pivots wanna be and take rough measurements. And then really, if we keep going for a minute, we can build out the landing plates for some of the front structures. So the engine cage can technically go together. I don't like when it looks like an engine cage is in the front and then you just tie it together with some tubes. But I think we can do it in a smart way where it looks integrated and it's all flowy through the car. But I think we can get that. We can do engine cage in here, shock mounts, beam pivots, steering pivots. We can go back here. We can do bump stop mounts. We can do shock mounts, fuel cell cradle, and we can have this whole thing chilling. The next phase is we put it back under there, we place the engine, place the trans, then we pull the engine and the trans out, pull this off, remount it, and then we can do full exhaust and we can just build it right here on the table, super clean. We can go all the way. We can even bulkhead for brake lines. We can essentially plumb this whole thing out. We can run all the exhaust, we can weld everything out and get it super close, and then we can put it back under the car and cage the thing. The next step is, we got to talk about that because it would require some extra work, but you can almost have landing pads that are plates where the cage could be like Alan's Jeep. Alan's Jeep has a completely powder coated frame, and then it's a completely powder coated cage, and then the Jeep body sandwiches in between that stuff, and it's got a matrix of grade 8 hardware that holds everything together. You can almost do that with this too if you wanted it, and then you can literally powder coat the whole frame and you're chilling. The other thing is you can build skid plates under here, do your whole thing. And the good part is we have A500 structural steel. We don't have some bullshit stock frame that we had to patch all the holes in and plate in and put miles of welding into. It keeps things uniform. The other thing with this is we will have this available. So I know that's more of a rare cab configuration, but if you have a super cab or a single cab, then we can shore up the section that makes sense, and then you can still have this same thing where it's essentially setting you up for a beam setup, a body drop, proper notching in the rear so you get big up travel. The up travel is set for this where the top of the tire almost kisses the inside of the fiberglass fender, the bedside and the front fender. So that's where we're at. Luke is currently working on overlays for this portion here and this portion. We have bolt-on bumps for the rear. We have weld-on bumps for the front. I think once he gets these done, this thing's gonna go back under that. And then once it goes under there, same deal, going back to what I was talking about is figuring out beam pivots, just verifying stuff. We just don't wanna do any guesswork here. So getting it under there, verifying everything is gonna clear, designing the pivots, getting the assembly done, and then putting it on the car. The one thing that we're doing different here is it is just a go, go, go for Luke. So there is no welding being done except for stuff where we have to cover it, right? So full pin welds on all the miters that he put together, sanded, welded, blended, and then, overlays on top. So what we'll do for welding this thing is I'm totally confident in getting optimal welding results, even if it's like this. I don't need to weld that part in hand because no matter what, we're just gonna be able to rotate this thing around. And I think even if I stand up here and this frame is together, so the driver and the passenger side are connected, we can just put it on the ground and stand it up, and I'll just treat each area as just a little zone to weld. So I feel confident in that. There's nothing that's scaring me as far as like, man, we should have welded that on the table and then put it on the car. And what that does is that doesn't slow up Luke's progress, because if I'm jammed up doing other stuff, working on other cars, then, you know, for me to sit here and start welding all these assemblies just so he can put them on the car, it's definitely not as effective. So we're trying to navigate this as a team. Everybody here has kind of got their positions and the things that they're learning and growing at doing. And I think that's the way to operate. You know, it's the same as any kind of a strike team. You know, everybody has the same general direction on wanting to win and how to execute a mission. And then everybody is a specialist at something. That's the same thing with the guys. So we're all working together on everything. Everybody has a hand in every car. Not one car is someone's baby. You know, there's no emotional ties to that. Everybody is a part of each project, and it's kind of a beautiful thing to watch. So things to look for next time. This is going to be welded out. That's not true. I don't even know I said that. Things to look for next time. Brackets on, components on, ready to weld. I think if we're going to start taking on welding, and I can do some time management where that makes sense, that will be all the suspension underpinnings for the front. So the radius arms, the knuckles and the steering, and the beams. If I can get to those and weld those, great. That would be next on the hit list. But Luke is just pressing on this thing. So perfect world. I think next update, it's pivots for the beams, pivots for the steering, possible cut on the frame and like frame horn coming out. If Luke decides and we figure out that we want to connect these two, because right now they're just fixtured here, but they're not actually connected. They're two separate like frame rails floating. You know, maybe there's some kind of tube layout that connects them. There's some kind of a front tube, you know, or a lower bumper tube that comes down in front of the steering that connects the stuff. And then the fuel cell cradle will connect the stuff. So we do have the fuel cell. It's the rear is built, the inside dimension is built, I think, for a 1/2 inch on each side for the fuel cell. So it's all to spec where it should go together super nice, and we're not just throwing parts into a random thing. Another benefit of this frame. So it's weird. I'm so stoked on all the cars, but this one, I feel like this one piques different interest because it's more of an attainable car. I know one of you guys asked last time about, you know, why not just center mount it and do all this and do all that for this, the project and the budget and this and that, but the budget for this is a lot less. You have to understand we're still on top because all of these sub-assemblies, we would still have to have built these. And then I always go back to this with that factory frame out there. There's got to be 200 holes in that thing. The other thing is it's a C frame. We would, you know, a C-channel style frame. We would have to box everything in so it's rigid. We'd be welding the entire seam. We'd double pass it. You know, then we're going to fill all the holes so it has like a hot rod feel to it, because that's kind of the motto we're going for here is like a clean hot rod street truck, but capable. And, you know, we're not having to do firewall work on that where we're cutting the whole entire floor out and the entire firewall out and scooting the engine back. And a center mount is a lot more involved than you think, and it requires a completely proprietary chassis just for the center mount. This is still something that goes under a cab. It's still something that's very economical in comparison to something like the wagon or the Range Rover, cars like that. So we're gonna get a good win here. It strikes my interest because it feels like more practical of a vehicle. And it's still a big block Ford and crazy stuff, but there's a practicality about this that at least I feel that makes it really exciting, and it's almost like a more attainable thing. Sometimes, you know, I totally get it when you look at these, they look like novelty items that are not attainable. And I think Dolly is one of these ones where it's a badass like hot rod truck, and for a lot of us, I think it feels like it's more something that we could palletize and have ourselves. So that's where we're at. Just expect more stuff on this thing. If we're winning super hard, then we have all the front suspension welded. That would be great to see, all out on the table. I'm sick of looking at all the root passes. So if I can get my ass in gear on this and a bunch of other stuff, then we'll have this thing welded. So happy Thursday. See you guys later.